Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. I'm Denise Thompson, managing partner of the DiJulius Group, and I'm excited to tell you about today's episode, where John DiJulius interviews Stan Slapp, the renowned thought leader in company culture. Stan's books on business culture have landed on the bestseller lists of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today. He is the CEO of the international consulting company called, by a remarkable coincidence, Slapp. Here's what you'll learn in this week's episode. Who cares why things suck? What's important is what you do about it. What culture really means. The 3 critical cultures you need to be examining right now as a leader. How your leadership's emotional commitment is what solves problems that are unsolvable, creates energy when all the energy has been expended, and ignites emotional commitment in others. You don't want a culture that takes work home. You want a culture that brings your company home. The importance of being human first and manager second. Now here's your host, the DiJulius Group's Chief Revolution Officer, John DiJulius.
Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I am so excited to have the OG of culture, the mafia of culture, Mr. Stan Slapp. How are you, Stan?
I'm good, man. I'm a whole mafia. I'm a whole organized crime.
You are.
That's great, man. I love that. Okay.
Where's this find you? Where are you at today?
San Francisco. Yeah. I mean, I came off the road, probably like a lot of us have, from 300,000 miles a year to dead stop. And the room service here at home sucks. And I call and then go and get it myself. It's horrible. But
right.
Other than this, I'm home, San Francisco.
Well, good. So Stan, you've been a keynote at our what was it used to be the Secret Service Summit, now is the Customer Service Revolution Conference. And you want to talk about a branding disaster. I've had so many people ask me if we still do the FBI. And I was like, oh my God, people didn't understand. So we had to pivot that. But you were one of the highest rated speakers we've ever had. And your topic just is timeless, but it really resonates today. So I was stumbling, and I don't know how long it's been, a couple weeks or longer, but I'm reading everything I can read and kind of, trying not to like too much because, you just get everything saying the same. But you came out with a white paper, you and your team, called Tough Times, Tougher Teams. And, to me, it's about tough love. And I highlighted. It would have been easier to highlight what I didn't highlight. It would have been less time. And, it inspired me. It pissed me off. It made me look in the mirror. Tell us about the background of this awesome white paper that is going to be shared with all the listeners. It's a link to Stan Slapp's website and how to download this white paper, which is a must.
Well, it came, all my writing, all the books, everything else comes from the work we really do with companies around the world. So in 2008, when the financial crisis hit in 2008, we helped a lot of companies navigate successfully through that. And back then, John, it was more of a tough love message. It was really basically, listen, whining is not a strategy. Victim is not a job description. Everyone else is in trouble too. It's not management information. Who cares why things suck? What you do about it is what counts. But back then in 2008, you just had to worry about someone touching your financial portfolio. Now, with the gravitas of what's happening now, I felt that we had to bring it up and address it with a different tone and a different set of very practical, actionable solutions and strategies. So that was the genesis, is we're seeing everybody take a hit. And even if businesses weren't taking a hit, because there are some that are just made for these circumstances. The veneer was being stripped off them. If they only had a transactional relationship with their customers, that was very clearly revealed. And probably the same for their internal culture. And so if they didn't see the damage that they were suffering, they were going to see it afterwards. So anyway, it felt like the time to do this and really to offer it as help. We want to know that when things fell down around us, we stood up for people. And so, yeah, that's why we did.
And you did that. And the tagline is, it's not about what happened, it's about what happens next. And I love it because 44 pages of just awesome content, actionable, and how as leaders, we have to get out of fetal position, right? It's comfortable only for so long, but you're right. Victimization is not a strategy. And what's the first thing we should be doing as leaders of companies?
I think the very first thing, it's fundamental, not as in simple-minded, as in essential, is make the call on what you want out of these tough times. Do you just want to survive, or do you want to succeed? And that's far from a rhetorical difference. If your goal is to survive these tough times, okay, well, that's headed down one path. And what that means is you're going to probably flinch when you should punch. You're going to hunker down, and everybody around you is going to hunker down around you, and you're going to focus on where you are. If you say instead, we want to succeed, even if that is just an insane proposition, given what we're dealing with, but we want to emerge faster and stronger out of these tough times without compromising purpose and principle. We want to have our best years ever amidst this madness. Well, that's a different road. And that means you're going to collaborate differently, invent differently, inspire confidence around you differently, and focus on where you want to be, not where you are. So that's the critical first step. And let me just add that, so if you raise your hand and say, yeah, no, I want to succeed, well, you keep your hand up all day. There's other hands that will decide what happens now. Those other hands are the three groups that decide the success of your business at all times: your manager culture, your employee culture, and your customer culture. And so the rest of the tough times, tougher teams is really the power of these cultures to serve you and save you is stunning, including during tough times, especially during tough times. How to recognize what these things really are, what these groups are, and that this is not soft stuff. It's the stuff of hardcore business results, and how to gain the protective evangelism of each of these groups to allow you to succeed. That's kind of the map of the white paper.
Manager culture, employee culture, customer culture, and let's get into it. But what I really like is you define culture, because I'm pretty sure if you ask 100 people what culture is, you will get 100 variations. Yes. And as a leader, I need to understand what culture is before I know how to make it better, measure it to even know if it's good, bad, and where it's weakness. How do you define culture?
Well, culture happens. A culture comes into existence whenever a group of people share the same basic living circumstances. And so they naturally band together to share common beliefs about the rules of survival and emotional prosperity. So how do we survive all living in this jungle, in this tribe with this chief? And then knowing we're going to be okay, how do we get rewarded emotionally and avoid punishment? And so if you just hold that image, if you were living in the jungle, and as far as you knew, you were the only one who was ever living in the jungle, for all your wanderings, you never met anyone else, your priority concern would be how to stay alive. Is this cave safe to sleep in? Is this watering hole safe to drink from? Are there snakes in the trees? Quality of life would be a secondary concern to quantity of life. So the best thing that could happen to you, or a great thing that could happen to you, is if you finally met somebody else living in the same jungle. Now you had all your learnings and you had all their learnings, and both you would be exponentially safer. The best thing that could happen is if you finally met a lot of other people, because again, you'd be stronger. But a culture is not the beliefs about the way things are. That's the currency of the culture. The culture is a self-protective organism that's created whenever people share these same circumstances. And that could be in the jungles of Samoa, or we all work in the same industry and the same company on the same team for the same manager. It's a self-protective organism that has its own purpose, which is to protect itself. It's not going to protect the company unless it can align protecting itself with protecting the company. And so it's to recognize it's an organism, which means its motives are pure and predictable. And John, it will give you, your culture will give you whatever you want. You just have to give it what it wants first. So to recognize it's not the responsibility of your culture to understand the business logic. It's the responsibility of your business to understand the culture's logic. You get that one thing right, you're unbeatable in anything that you choose to do.
All right. So I love this. So I assume to move forward with a strategy, we should probably go in that order. And correct me if I'm wrong, of the three cultures, right? Examine where our leadership is first before employees.
Sure,
and then, no, but is that, you know, where does someone start?
Yeah, we generally start that way. Yeah, like if you look at what it takes to create measurable performance improvement in a company, it generally happens in that order. Yeah, so we can talk about, I mean, if you'd like, we talk about an issue that is hypercritical to get on top of within each of those cultures. You want to do that?
Yeah, please.
All right. Well, if you start with your manager culture, and that could be executive to entry level manager, there are some things that are common to every level of management. And those are the 6 words that are the essence of a manager's job description. Whether you are in the C-suite or, you know, whatever you're doing, it doesn't really matter. And those words they're never stated, but they're always implied. That the essence of a manager's job description is, if it sucks, suck it up. That's what's really being said. In fact, the higher you go, the more this stoicism is expected of you. Among swirling seas of uncertainty, you're supposed to be the rock, the unchanging force that everybody can look to. And this stoicism is demanded anyway during normal times.
Right.
Right. And you're going to be depending on your managers, the heads of your organizations, be they big or small, to really carry that weight for you now. So your managers who already have this expectation of stoicism on an ordinary day and ordinary times are now taking on more weight. So now they have to deal with whatever their personal circumstances are. They have to deal with new personal circumstances of their employee culture. And these are profound circumstances. They can't be written off as inappropriate or to address. They can be really serious things. And they can't work directly with people anymore, and they can't go see their customers anymore. And there are new performance expectations as the company's scrambling to do things, and you have to get done more with less. If you keep expecting increased stoicism from the heads of your organization, those heads are going to explode on you. So what you need is a way for your people to feed themselves so they can get back, Jack, and do it again. Because if not, they're just going to detach. It's too much weight. It has nothing to do with their strength, their professionalism, their maturity, their concern about the company. There's only so much weight they can take. If you want them to take more, you got to allow them a way of offloading some of that weight. And the source of so you want emotional commitment, John. Intellectual commitment, financial commitment, physical commitment is not going to do it. Even jamming those things together, it's not the same as emotional commitment. Emotional commitment would translate to your managers taking on company success like a personal crusade. The source of emotional commitment in any human being comes from the ability to live their own deepest values in a relationship or an environment. And so what this means is saying that the company's values cannot always be the first cause here. Managers' ability to bring their own values to work. What I've learned about the best way to live, I got to be able to bring that to work. And I got to be able to use that to make the case to my people, this is the way we're going to work. If I'm not getting fulfillment of that at work, I'm just getting emptied at work and only getting filled up at home. So there's more information in the white paper about how to do this.
No, I love where you're going. Listen, there's a term called empathy fatigue. And usually it applies to businesses that constantly deal with customers with a high pain. And that could be a behavioral health. That could be oncology. That could be a funeral home, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we're all have empathy fatigue because everyone we're dealing with at home, our friends, our employees are dealing with that, which sucks, the energy out of us. So I love what you're saying, because I think on one hand, we have to remember as leaders, we're on stage, and now more than ever, we have to show that our employees made the right decision and they could not be in a better place, and we got their back. But on the other side, we have to be vulnerable, and we have to make sure we have that inside of us. So it's not just fake it, and that's a hard thing, right? That's a very hard thing, because you do have people that, want to be leaders during good times, during the last 9 years when the economy is booming. Yeah, let me be a leader. But wait, not now.
Yeah.
Let me take a leave of absence.
Now I left the iron on at home. I'll be right back. And the other thing we're going to see is we're finally going to see the folly of according leadership to people by position alone. Because a lot of people you're going to look to as leaders are not really leaders. Leadership is not a position. It's not even initially a process. It's a purpose before it's a process. And a lot of people in leadership positions based on hierarchy, or have just been given the ability to refer to themselves as leaders, when the pressure really hits, they may have been very capable managers. That's a different thing. That's a completely different thing. And so you're going to see a lot of those people that you turn to as for their leadership, or the culture turns to, that just default because they were never real leaders in the first place. Now, the upside of this is because leadership is not position dependent, you have a lot of people distributed throughout your company at all levels that actually do have legitimate leadership in them. So, I mean, fundamentally, leadership is somebody who has a hyper awareness of their own values and so knows the way they want to live, which is in a world where those values are really fulfilled. They can't make that happen all by themselves. They have to turn their values into a compelling cause for others. So what leaders do is they say, we're in a bad place based upon this definition of, are we living this, my values? Let me make it a common bad place for you. We could be in a better place. Let's go. Let's go to this place. We can do this together, and you can follow me, but you can pass me by. I'll make it, an incentive for all of you. Anyway, anybody you can be an executive assistant, and you can also be a mother or a father or a partner who says, my kids will go to school. They will do this. They will get to this better place, better than my generation. You could just be somebody who's sitting at a desk that says, listen, we're in this bad place because of these circumstances now. We could be better than this. This is how we got to roll. We can do this to me, without any position power at all. That is real leadership. And the key is to allow that in your organization now. Don't get hung up going back to the well for the people who may not have deserved that leadership title in the first place. Open the ranks to anybody who qualifies by actually doing leadership things. Mentor those people. Reinforce those people. For God's sakes, do not be intimidated by those people. Don't be threatened by this. You can't have too much leadership right now. Maybe at any time. You cannot have that. So it's the downside presents some upside too. This could be the time when those people get plucked out of the chorus line, because leadership is rife throughout an organization. Don't look for it in the ordinary places. And for people that are taking the weight of that stoicism, give them a way to relieve that weight constantly. It's too much weight right now. They will be undependable for you. So I would say if we're talking about a manager culture, that's right.
No, and I believe, to your point, this is when you got to pull out your mission, purpose statements, core values, push the dust off them. Remember why you made them and what your business was built on, and recognize the people, like you said, who are living it. And it might be the janitor right now, whoever's exemplifying the mission. And I love this, what you say here. Your culture needs to believe that the more successful the company is during these tough times, the better it is for the world. I love that. Let's talk about that, because this is where you rally people around.
Yes, but it's got to be legitimate. And by the way, when you talk about values, whenever my company has to go in and it's not that we do rehab work constantly, but there are times certainly that the company has lost its way culturally and we have to get the culture back. We find that you could probably date the beginning of the trouble to the company officially declaring values. It's kind of the values, officially declared corporate values are the gateway drug to cultural detachment, basically, because values are usually presented as absolutes in a company, right? The company is saying, if you want to really look at the soul and DNA of this company, it's these 5 words or these 7, whatever the list of values are. And sometimes they're not even values, they're strategies, okay, for market domination. And strategies change all the time. They should. Values never change. They shouldn't. But whatever. There's this list of unaudited aspirational statements that now appears all over the walls and other places. Well, they're presented as absolutes to the culture. And so the culture naturally expects them to be protected, absolutely. And if that doesn't happen, you have taken the most profound of human concepts, which are values, and you pitched in the most profound of human organisms, which is a culture, under false pretenses. And trust is fractured at a very deep level. The better thing to do tactically is stop referring to them as values. A culture is a human organism. It understands the concept of values. Refer to them as obsessions. To say, listen, these 5 things here, we are obsessed that this company function this way. Now, will this company always function this way? What are you, nuts? This is a real world. No, we won't always function this way. You know, things will get past the thing. Do not judge us and do not judge this executive team by whether we always adhere to these obsessions. Judge us by the ferocity of our response if we ever don't. And there's a big difference that takes the weight of perfection off the company and off the senior team because you're setting yourself up to fail. It's not a rhetorical difference. It's a critical difference in the way that these things are presented. As long as you brought up values, I thought I would.
No, that's good. That's good. And I agree. All right. So now let's transition to the employee culture.
Okay.
How do we make them feel better, safer, to the point that we can, and get them focused on, the job that they need to do and them not being able to be emotionally exhausted and burned out?
Well, I put a number of things in the white paper, but if one thing, and this could apply as well to your manager culture, but one thing with your employee culture, the biggest threat, significant threat to the commitment of your employee culture isn't here yet, but it's coming. And you have to get ahead of this. So a culture, because a culture exists to protect itself, it prizes surety of its environment. Even if it doesn't like the surety, at least it knows how to navigate around it if it understands that what is unchanging. And even though we've been living with the pandemic for a year plus now, we are still remarkably, frustratingly, only at the beginning of this roller coaster ride. The rolling impact of this, even when we're post-vaccination, hopefully post-herd humanity, the rolling impact on lives and livelihoods and the enterprise and those relationships hasn't even begun to be seen yet or felt yet. So there will come a time when for the culture, your employee culture, this uncertainty is just chronic. It can't even remember a time when it wasn't like this, and it can't see a time when it won't be like this. And around that time will also be a time when connection, human connection, is just electronic. And again, it can't remember a time when it wasn't like this. And when that happens, as it surely will, there's going to be a deep, it's not even emotional, almost a spiritual exhaustion, like a weariness that just descends on a culture. And the way that manifests itself, John, is the culture begins to blame external circumstances for internal performance. It becomes a culture of victimization and apathy. And listen, these things are at such a meta level and so prolonged that really it's like there's just nothing we can do. And when that happens, if that happens in your culture, then it's insidious. It's even when a crisis passes, it's difficult to get rid of it. And so there's a way out, but you got to get on top of this now. So the human brain cannot maintain simultaneous oppositional emotions. You may veer like a crazy person back and forth between happy and sad, but you cannot be simultaneously happy and sad, as an example. Culture as a human organism also cannot maintain oppositional emotions. So it cannot feel hopeless and hopeful at the same time. Even though it could veer back and forth throughout the day, it cannot be energized and exhausted at the same time. It cannot be determined and depressed at the same time. So the key is to recognize that because the culture's got all these problems it's dealing with, what you need to do is create a culture that takes its energy from solving problems. You need a culture that loves problems, because being presented with problems and the attempt to solve problems, it confirms the culture's ingenuity to itself, and its intelligence to itself, and its unity to itself. We love to solve problems because that proves to ourselves all the great things about ourselves. And so then you have a culture that says, bring it on. Yeah, okay, this happened to us. What happens now is up to us. And in a true problem-solving culture, like Google, as just a common example, as a client of ours, of my companies, Google's a culture that loves to solve problems. And in a true problem-solving culture, the culture doesn't even actually have to solve the problems. Just flinging themselves at the problems, they get high on the attempt. And because it confirms these things. And so this is critical to get ahead of this exhaustion, because once this exhaustion seeps past your defenses, you have an entirely different problem. And it's ethereal, and it's new. It's hard to get rid of. You need the culture to block it for you. Now, can I give a simple tactical example of that I put in the white paper? Are you cool with that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay. So what do you do about that? And the white paper is to give you concepts, but again, is to give you practical and tactical executable solutions. So here's a simple one, really simple one. It's what I call look up, look down, look around. There are companies and organizations actually solving stuff in the midst of this craziness in all sorts of innovative ways. Now, those companies may not be in your space, your industry. They may not be of your size. They could be bigger. They could be smaller. They may not be in your country. They may be any place. The key is to charge your culture with going to find those, to say, find examples of companies creating success in new ways amidst this madness. Again, look up. For companies bigger, look down. Companies smaller, don't sneer at companies small. Look around. Look in your country. Look at your industry. Look at other countries and other. Just get online. Look at stuff, right? And let me give you an example, and then unpack what they're doing and see what's relevant. So the example I give in the white paper is I'm talking to you from San Francisco. Outside of San Francisco, about 30 miles outside of San Francisco, there's a little community called Half Moon Bay. In Half Moon Bay, there's a tiny little nonprofit organization called Sweet Farm. And Sweet Farm, the mission of Sweet Farm is to take farm animals, sheep, goats, llamas. For some reason, llamas, I don't know, there's a whole llama abuse story that really needs to be told, that have been abandoned or abused, and rehab them and let them live a good life. They have big farmlands and free range, and so they fix them up and let them wander around, right? Hardly a business that the state of California considered essential to have it remain open during the pandemic, right? So Sweet Farm was facing an existential threat. First of all, their donations dried up because discretionary funding dried up, but also, I mean, what were they going to do? It wasn't on anybody's radar. They were going to go out of business. So in desperation, they created something called Goat to Meeting. And Goat to Meeting, they took their farm animals and offered them up to any company's Zoom call. So it's $100 for 10 minutes. So you have your strategy team or whatever on a Zoom call, and you say, to wrap it up, okay, everybody, we good on this plan? We're good to go. Everybody feels they've been heard. We're good to go. Okay, Bob, yes. Mary, yes. Everybody got your, okay, anything, anybody? And one of the little squares goes, bah, right? Okay, it's hard to not relieve the pressure if that's going on, right? So, okay, when I talked to Sweet Farm in March of last year, they'd already made their number for the entire year. They were looking to hire people amidst the pandemic, and they had so exhausted their inventory, they had to reach out to other small nonprofit farms around the country saying, listen, you have any goats that look good on film? You know, that kind of understand go-to-market strategies and agile. When I say agile, that they like, okay, good. And so, okay, a weird, wacky little story. What does that mean to your company? It means that here is a company that found a revenue opportunity that did not exist before the pandemic because we weren't all on Zoom. We weren't all on Microsoft Teams. We weren't all there. It did not exist before the pandemic. In fact, it existed because of the pandemic. If you just take that concept and say, looking around our own company, using that as a criterion, what revenue opportunity could exist for us because of the pandemic that did not exist because of the pandemic? While you are doing that, you cannot believe that there is no hope. You can't be doing that at the same time you go, we're just doomed. We're screwed. There's nothing. You cannot do the two things at the same time. So anyway, there are things you can do, but the bigger point is you must get ahead of this coming exhaustion.
Would you like to raise your customer experience scores and lead your industry and service? Contact Claudia at thedijuliusgroup.com to find out how the DiJulius Group can help you build a world-class service organization.
There's a lot of things at play here, right? We want to rally the troops. We want to distract them almost from, like you said, woe is me and my husband lost his job. Does that mean I'm going to lose my job? There's a lot of stuff going on. On top of that, now we're isolated. So that hurts a culture, right? I'm not seeing my coworkers every day in the cube next to me or in the kitchen getting Keurig. And we both know that that's never going back to what it used to be. So Stan, from your standpoint, how do we build and repair a culture with the isolation added to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there isn't a single answer there, but I will tell you that the mistake that a lot of companies have innocently made, because they never dealt with circumstances like this before,
right,
is, and we talked to a lot of companies that said, oh yeah, we got everybody set up to work from home. And what that meant is laptops and Wi-Fi and a Zoom meeting schedule for everybody. Now, that just means that they're taking work home.
Right.
They're not bringing the company home with them. And that is a whole different thing. And companies, especially if there's any companies, any representatives of companies that are large companies or even hot, well-funded startups here, you're used to letting the buildings and the badges and the busyness take care of the belonging for you. Somebody comes to work and, you know, they get past security with their badge and lots of stuff going on in meeting rooms and buzz in the hallways and you know, and so it's like you're in our house now. You're in the big house. And that you kind of get complacent that's, of course, you're part of this, like this family.
Right.
Well, people are in little houses now, but it's their house with their family. And unless you can take that sense of belonging, of purpose, what this says about you, and you can translate that home, you are going to just leave people with, well, now I'm going to create my own sense of family and belonging. And I got a lot of clues on what that would be. I'm home, I'm isolated, it's my people. And they are going to detach from the company. So there in the white paper, there's a number of things that can be done. But I think the problem you have to solve is don't think people are set up to work from home just because they have the technology to work from home and the schedule to work from home. That's the barest thing you need to do. You need to bring that connection home. And there are a number of ways to do that. But that's the problem you really need to solve. because
and you talk about in your white paper the emotional detachment at every level, not only with the customer but the employee. And one of the things that we found out in my company is we were doing what everyone was doing, thinking it was enough, and we'd be having Zoom calls 2-3 times a week, and we still do. But the Zoom calls with our team members were like any meeting; they were so agenda heavy that we had to cut you off because we're not. We have to wrap up, and we got 6 more items. And so what we realized is we weren't allowing for the innocuous rabbit holes, and rabbit holes are key. So now we've had some Zoom calls with no agenda. And Stan, what's going on? How was your weekend? What's the best thing about your weekend? Yeah. And now it allowed for those rabbit holes to come in and say, oh, Stan, I didn't know your mother-in-law was sick. Oh, God, I feel horrible. Or I didn't know your son just graduated from. And, instead of chop, 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 we got to get to the next line item.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I we don't know what the future of work looks like. Some people will never return, but if you're an air traffic controller or a carpet installer or a sous chef, it's really hard to do that from your second bedroom at home. So there are going to be some, and a lot of companies are going to want their people back, even if it's on a different kind of schedule and stuff. So to proclaim the age of human contact is ended in our lifetime, and so has the traditional office space, I think that's an exaggeration. It may settle into something legitimately new, but people need to be together. And you're right, they need those hallway conversations. There needs to be hey, what are you doing right now? Why don't we go in our offices, which are now a very expensive storage space. We are not prohibited to enter, I might add. In our offices, we took out all the coffee stuff because there's a Starbucks around the corner. We want people to go out. We want them to sit down together. We want to be waiting for their coffee together. And or somebody to go, I'll go out. But then when they come back, have to go into everybody's office and go, okay, here's your coffee. We wanted that. We didn't want somebody to just go to the kitchen, get the coffee, come back and be in their offices. So you do miss that hallway, the impromptu stuff. You just miss the tangible signals of camaraderie. You miss those rabbit holes, as you said. So those are the things that you need to use technology for. You also need to seduce the influencers. It's now, mom or dad work from home day. The company is just, guess who's coming to dinner? The company. It's now invaded your home, and you really didn't ask for permission for that.
Right.
So there have to be some things that make the company like, why is mom or dad working all the time? Because now finally you have to provide an answer to your kids. What is it that you do? Like, you used to go off to work. I assume it was like, wow, you're like, saddling up and what in the world do you do? You get paid for that? Like, can I do that? You know what? I already can do that. Okay. So move over. And so the company has to be seen as a real benevolent presence at home too. And so there has to be dinner time conversation. There has to be context. You
address that in the white paper so well, because we're our kids used to be able to run around and have fun or play their stereo or PlayStation loud, and now we're telling them they can't, and that's not fair. But I'm on a call, I'm on a meeting, I'm doing an interview, and that's changed their environment. So you give some really tactical ways to make them feel more appreciative of the job and the company that their parents may be working for.
Yeah.
The other thing I've seen, and the one thing we can know for sure, while COVID isn't changing the world, it just accelerated it, and nothing will ever be exactly how it was. But we always see in everything that the pendulum swings so far over one way that then people are dying for it. And I've even seen that a year ago, more than a year ago, pre-pandemic. I'd be getting ready to go run errands, and I'd have to go to the hardware store, DIY or Dick's Sporting Goods store. And then I'd say, why? Right? I don't need the stuff like today. Order it on Amazon. It'd come tomorrow, and I saved myself. And I love that. And I always have to remind myself. But back then, I was getting my social engagements. I was going to the office. The other day, I needed something silly, something I needed from Dick's Sporting Goods store. But my first thought was go on Amazon, order it. It wasn't anything I needed to try on or anything. But some was saying, you know what? I need to get out. I need interaction. And so that's, kind of the flip side. And one of the things that I love was when you talked about concerts, right? And I love that example, especially because of the business that me and you are in. That can you talk about, concerts and why we all need that live community and energy? I love that part of your white paper.
Yeah, I mean, that is, and there is a business where its entire model has been upended. And I mean, it's just a horrible circumstance. It's affected so many people. It's not just the artist, it's all the support services it's just ridiculous.
But you talk about how, we concert goers love the community. It's
right. That's it.
Worse seats. You don't hear it as well, right? We can watch it on YouTube or
there's much better ways to see a concert, right? So yeah, that's what I'm saying is, so the industry's initial response, understandably, again, unprecedented disaster, has been an attempt to retain the in-person concert experience. Let's get people back into those halls as fast as possible with some really bizarre ways of hose them down, do this. It's a 30,000 seat amphitheater. We're only going to sell 300 tickets. That won't make you feel more isolated.
Right.
That's all of this stuff, will put you in plastic bubbles. But why do people go to concerts, John? For the live music? You're right. They can get that on a live album. For the merchandise, they can buy it online. For the excitement of being in the same room as their favorite artist, unless you're in the first 20 rows, man, you might as well be watching from another state. Okay. It's more exciting to actually watch it on screen when you're guaranteed a front row seat. So concert goers, yes, they want the community. And that's what you have to replace. To be surrounded, it could be 100 people, it could be 100,000 people, but they're all like-minded, like-hearted. Music is the language of a culture. And so it's your people in your time celebrating what's important to you, and it's your identity and what it says about you to like this artist, this genre of music, and that the people around you are all saying, yes, this reached me too. That's what they want. That's what you need to replicate. Now, if you need to use technology to do it, do it. But I would say that as a metaphor for any company, that what you really have to do first is figure out what is being lost that you have to replace. And really, John, what most companies sell to their customers is not what their customers would buy if they could buy anything from you. Okay. It's like you don't give them a choice. They have to do the translation themselves. Companies sell value, right? You sell your value prop. You sell your features, your pricing, your quality, whatever. What customers would want to buy, and this is just as true B2B as B2C, what customers would want to buy if they could buy anything is fulfillment of their own values. So somebody has to say, well, if I buy this, can I believe it says something about me? But they have to do all that work. It's easier with some products and companies than others, but they basically have to do the work. If you were really selling what a customer wanted to buy, truly, we're selling, personal fulfillment. We're selling the things that matter to you. And there'd be a line around the pandemic or no pandemic. It wouldn't matter. So this is a time, if we're talking about customer culture as well, this is a time to recognize something that was always there as a truth. And it has just revealed itself even more.
Well, and it forces us to bring, a lot of us, we want energy, right? And that community and that culture. And whether it's, I don't go to the Browns football game because, like you said, I freeze my ass off. I really can't see the play. I just hear if the crowd cheered, I think we made a positive play. But I got 40 other thousand psychos that are high-fiving me and hugging me that I don't know. But we're all cheering.
They're your people, man. Yeah.
From speaking to even bricks and mortar. We worked with Starbucks years ago. I psychoanalyzed why, as a customer. So there's a lot of Starbucks, but there's a Starbucks in my city that didn't have drive-through. And it was kind of not on my way to the freeway. And there was the Starbucks on the way to the freeway to work. had drive-through. So many times that was the best route to go, fastest drive-through, get on the freeway. But there was a percentage of time that I would go to my local one that didn't have drive-through, that wasn't, it was a left instead of a right, all those things. And when I thought about it, why, I finally didn't realize it, but subconsciously, when there was something I wanted to brag about my sons, won a match yesterday or a trophy or whatever, that I knew I had to walk in and I'd see my buddy Stan or my neighbor Stan, and he'd say, "What's going on? Glad you asked." And then I could tell you about it. That was the difference. And I don't believe brick and mortar is going to be a dinosaur because of what you said about there's energy, there's the emotional connection that can never be replicated.
That's right. And if you are forced to replicate it with technology, you have to understand what it is you're replicating. And so, it's traditional business thinking that you go to market based on value. And the better your value prop is, the more successful you're going to be. Even before the pandemic, living in an age where anything is pretty much available to anybody that wants to buy it. And there's all these conduits now of communication from customer culture to say this company is good, this company is bad, whatever. To just go to market based on value pretty much ensures you're going to put yourself into a margin shredding commodity play. So it's always, even before the pandemic, it's always been the companies that are going to be the most successful are going to go to market not just based on value, but based on relevance. And I don't mean just another spin on value. I mean true relevance. Most companies only attempt to be relevant to their customer when they're trying to sell them something. And that means they're choosing to be irrelevant to them for most of the time, which is a very dangerous business strategy. Well, these days, again, everything is exacerbated now. These days, to not say we want to be in 99% of the conversation with you. We want to be in your heads and hearts, not just when we're trying to engage you to buy something, you're engaged in buying something. You've got to get to that point. And that doesn't mean selling all the time. It means strengthening the relationship. Like value is selling, relevance is giving. But giving is not an anti-revenue strategy, man. Helping your customers in tough times without using it to sell them something is the best way to earn their affection, which often translates into them buying something. And remembering that you did this for them when their awareness was most acute. So if you're selling B2B, you have customers who are obsessed with the sudden shock to their revenue, their supply chain issues, internal turmoil, capacity to serve. Even if they're doing well, it's still real shock to the business. That's what they're thinking about 99% of the time. Help them with that. Connect them with others about that. Use your mighty resources to summon thought leaders to give them that for free. If it's B2C, or really B2B is still H to H, you're still selling human to human. You're not selling to the enterprise, you're selling to a human being representing the enterprise. But if you are selling that's B2C, you have customers who are obsessed with threats posed by health and isolation and unemployment and social justice. How do we survive this? That's what they're thinking about all the rest of the time, most of the time. Enter that conversation, give them solutions, give them solution paths, give them tools. In fact, the less it has to do with what you sell them, the more it stands as a proof point that you really do care about them. Because they can't find any hook. Well, yeah, I appreciate this, but what's that doing for you? Like the example I love to give is from 2008, John, is when that crisis hit, and of course the restaurant industry takes the first hit. Cisco, not the technology Cisco, SYSCO, the restaurant supply chain, sent teams into restaurants, back of house and front of house teams. The back of house teams would look at plating and the line and portion control and all that. The front of house teams would look at the experience and promotion and stuff, and they would make recommendations. Now, in many cases, the back house recommendations meant you buy less of our product right now. But they were playing the long game. When the dust clears, who you gonna love? So have some faith and focus on relevance, not just on value.
Educate versus sell, right?
Yeah.
Educate versus sell. And what's in
Give
the best
versus take too. Give versus take.
You have a lot of really good, a lot of great things. Some of it along this line: be human first, and an accountant second, or a lawyer second, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And a lot of people made mistakes calling up saying, "Listen, we got a contract." Well, screw the contract. Put the contract in the drawer right now. I mean, people are scared, and they'll remember. And you say it, what you do now will be remembered. And if you were there for someone, another great quote in your white paper says, in times of crisis, customers will often shift from buying what they want to only buying what they need. And whether it was 6 months ago or in 6 months, are you something they need? And that might be toilet paper. Or it might be an affordable luxury that they can't live without because you give them that escape in a stressful time.
What they need is the human connection. What they need is why you went to one Starbucks instead of another. That's what they need right now.
Exactly.
Right.
This is great. Stan, before I let you go, and I appreciate your time today. All right. What's the most urgent advice you would give leaders listening? We throw a lot at them.
Yeah. I would say, listen, amidst all this uncertainty, there's two things we know for sure. One is that these tough times won't last forever. And two is the story of how you stood up to them will. And you're going to be living with that story for a long time. It's time to start writing it now so it ends the way you want it to. And if you look at how a human being, any of us as human beings, justifies the gift of life. How do you do that? Well, you give back for all the advantages that have been given to you. You practice compassion and empathy and kindness. You strive to make the world both a better place and not a worse one. Why should justifying the life of an enterprise be any different? To be trusted, to care about what matters most. Let this now be the defining grace of your company. And what matters most is your humanity. During these tough times, you can lose a lot and still survive. You can lose some revenue and market share. Your company can even lose its mind for a little while, but you cannot lose your soul. And it's true, John, what you were saying. What you do now will be remembered. Who you are now will be remembered far longer. And you're going to have to answer for this for a long, long time. You're going to have to answer who you are now for a long time to your company, to your customers, to your culture, to your children, to your community. Who were you when everything inside and around you was finally tested? And that is why, yes, my most urgent advice would be to be human first and a manager second.
I love it. So well said. It's a nice, cold, positive slap in the face. You see what I did there?
That was clever. I never heard that. Yeah.
Stan, how can people, and we will be providing your website, theslapcompany.com, that's 1P, and a link to down this white paper, incredible white paper, tough times, tougher teams. How else can people find out more about you, follow you, learn what your company provides?
You can be on LinkedIn, Slap Company, SLAP, the word company.com is our website. Because it's your audience, this is certainly not something I scratch on alley walls and stuff, but if you want to reach me directly, I mean, we have a full company operating around the world, but if you want to reach me, my email is stan@slapcompany.com. And my books are on Amazon or wherever else you can buy books.
New York Times best-selling books. We're going to have your LinkedIn, your social media, your email, and your links to your books all in the show notes.
All right. I would say the other thing is that, John, you and I go back a long ways. And I would say if you're looking for somebody who shares this point of view, the other guy on this podcast, it's his podcast, is somebody you should always look up to. Also very concerned about pragmatic solutions that, our business basically inside we say our business is help a bunch of people to make a bunch of money. And the way we do that is help other companies make a bunch of money by helping a bunch of people. And so I think if you share that point of view that you don't have to abdicate humanity, you can use the enterprise as a vehicle to do great stuff, personal legacy impact, and you can still be very successful. In fact, more successful with these cultures on your side. You can get that information from me. You can get it from John. We really do this work for many of the biggest companies in the world, billions of dollars of performance improvement, 24 years, 44 countries. But the white paper exists as our gift to you. So if that's what you want, it's just the white paper, great. Download it from our website. If you want to talk about how we can help you directly, great. Be honored to do that.
I appreciate all that you've done and continue to do, Stan. I appreciate the friendship, the resources. One of my mantras, things I'm obsessed with, is give more, right? And you are exactly that. You give more than anyone ever expects. So I can't thank you enough for writing the white paper, all the things you're doing to improve and extend the revolution. And I appreciate you being with us today.
Likewise, huh? That was great. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast, and we will see you next episode.
Have a comment, question, or suggestion? Please let us know. We love reading your comments and reviews. To hear more episodes, be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening and being part of the Customer Service Revolution.